The problem last night on MSNBC was white women. When I woke up this morning on MSNBC, Joe Scarborough was explaining that Latino men are also racist, that black men are also racist and misogynist. That the problem is that we haven't quadrupled down yet on calling the country mortally flawed and racist. Let's break that down now with Dr. Gad Saad, friend of the program here on The Will Cain Show. He's a visiting professor and global ambassador, Northwood University. He's also the author of The Parasitic Mind and the creator and the host of The Saad Truth with Dr. Saad. Gad, great to see you this morning.
Oh, you too.
What is your...
God. Can I tell you something before you even jump into asking a question?
Yeah.
I thought that I would feel good when I lost a lot of weight during COVID. I feel even better having lost the weight of the looming Kamala Harris taking over.
Why do you feel you are Canadian? You are a Lebanese immigrant. You are, and because this is a dividing line being drawn today, Dr. Saad, you are educated because this is also being laid at the feet of the uneducated. You are actually many of the things that someone would say should be in a voting coalition for Kamala Harris, at least if not on your ballot spiritually. But why do you feel this liberation today?
Yeah, no, thank you. That's a great question. I discussed it actually in X Spaces that I just finished because I'm defending universal ideals, right? So in chapter 1 of The Parasitic Mind, I talked about the two guiding ideals that shape my life are truth and freedom. And those are universal, right? They're not restricted to people in the United States or to Canada or in Kazakhstan. If you believe in truth and freedom, there is no conceivable pathway by which you would think that Kamala Harris and the Democrats are the party to support. And by the way, since Canada, there's an old expression that says when the United States sneezes, Canada catches a cold. So I may be in a different country, but I'm your neighborly, cousin, so to speak. And therefore, what happens in the United States certainly affects me.
I was just having a discussion with Fox's chief political analyst and the host and executive editor of Special Report, Brett Baer, talking about where this can leave Democrats going forward. Can they pick a candidate who is more moderate? The problem with that potentiality, Darcet, in my estimation, is that the first principles of a democracy, of the things that you want to hold dear, of a free people, are exactly the principles that have been jettisoned by Democrats, to your point. And I don't know of many people on the left, even those not running for office. I'm talking about those walking the streets, who have shown a fidelity to the concept of free speech, who have shown a fidelity to objective reality, who have shown a fidelity to judging individuals as individuals and not their identities. And I don't know how you can rehabilitate the left simply by picking a different person at the top of the left.
Agreed. And actually, more generally, I think the architecture of the human mind is such that it is profoundly difficult for people to ever admit that they were wrong, especially when it's about an anchored position that defines their personhood, right? So I was recently asked on a show, what is the singular phenomenon that has most surprised me about human behavior and human nature in my 30 plus years as a behavioral scientist? And I paused for a minute and I said, the inability for people to change their minds. Even if I give you incontrovertible, unassailable tsunami of evidence. So regrettably, never mind that as the Democrats we're talking about here, it's just most people don't have the epistemological humility to say, hey, I was wrong. That's what makes someone like Elon Musk and Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly so extraordinary, because they did hold different views. One of them didn't like Trump. Now she loves him. Joe Rogan and Elon Musk used to be of the left. Now they're no longer of the left. They were big supporters of Donald Trump. So I think, to your point, it's going to be very difficult for most Democrats, whether they be party affiliated or just the guys walking on the street, to change their opinions.
And because I think part of that, Dr. Saad, is that because it becomes ingrained in your identity. You bring up Elon Musk and Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly. I would put myself in this same bucket, in that, although never even close to someone who would have been described on the left, I had trouble in the beginning in 2016 coming around to Donald Trump. Now, that doesn't make me unique, but the way that I was able to come around, and my wife and I discussed this last night, she said, It's a lack of ego. And that sounds like a huge compliment to yourself or to pat yourself on the back. But what I think that what she's alluding to and what I'm now suggesting is my identity wasn't wrapped up in my opposition to Donald Trump. My identity wasn't wrapped up in seeing those that disagree with me as racist or Nazis. It was simply trying to understand reality around me. And then perhaps like Joe Rogan or Elon Musk, as you are able to better and more accurately describe and live within reality, you can make adjustments. But for too many people on the left, there's no attempt to even see reality because it's about their perception. I had a guy yesterday on my show, a leftist who told me Donald Trump was racist, and he said perception is reality. And I think that's his problem, that you're living within your perception, and that's why you'll never be able to learn from reality.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, and let me just add a little twist to it. So I inhabit the ecosystem that has the most number of parasitized people. They're called professors. It's the academic, ecosystem. And to see my colleagues this morning, so let's say on my personal Facebook page, many of my friends on my personal will be colleagues, right? And these are colleagues that are not, marine biologists. Usually they're colleagues in my disciplines, psychology, behavioral science, decision-making, evolutionary psychology. So you would think that if you've spent your entire life studying decision-making, studying persuasion, you might have some sense of introspection. Will, I'm here to tell you that the lunacy that they're exhibiting on my Facebook page is so disheartening because not one of them has stood on top of the mountain and said, in retrospect, I may have been wrong about X, Y, Z. They're just doubling down on how much most Americans are degenerate deplorables. It's grotesque.
And here's the reality that they have to confront. So Donald Trump won historic margins for a Republican of black men, 20% of black men. He won, and I don't have to ballpark it because I actually have it here with precision. He won 54% of Latino men. At that, he won 37% of Latino women. He actually won 52% of white women. He won with Jews. He won New York City in historic proportions. He didn't win it outright, but he won historical numbers for a Republican in New York City, probably in no small part by the movement of Jews. At the same time, he won Muslims in Michigan. If he was, in fact, a racist Nazi, he's the worst racist Nazi in history. He keeps winning over minorities.
So here's the point. Remember earlier I said the most difficult thing is for a human mind to change their opinion despite incontrovertible, unassailable evidence. Well, you just gave me all that data. And guess what? I'm now speaking as the prototypical academic. La, la, la. I don't want to hear it. All that this demonstrates is how satanic white supremacy is, in that it is convincing the Jews to vote for the Nazis. It is convincing the black men to vote for the KKK Grand Wizard. That's only showing how diabolical he is, Will. You're not convincing me. So you see, that's what makes it so galling for me, because I can't have meaningful conversations with supposed colleagues who are meant to be smart and educated.
Do you think, how would you predict the next 6 months, 1 year, and 4 years of a political climate in America? It's my guess, Dr. Saad, that the next 6 months could be quite fever-pitched, that it will continue to be the end of our democracy. I do think that Donald Trump's life still remains in jeopardy, especially now that every other mechanism from the legal system to the election process has been exhausted. I think that only heightens probabilities that there's one final thing that can be done to stop Donald Trump. But then my thought is, after a little while of flailing, like a cornered animal or a dying animal who lashes out, then there will be acceptance. There's denial, then there's acceptance. And perhaps a year down the road, sanity will begin to be restored. This is my prediction, and I guess perhaps my hope. And then, and perhaps even with the Donald Trump presidency that is a unifying presidency and much different than the one that is predicted, they move on. That's sort of my 6-month, 1 year, 4 year prediction. How do you see the political climate in America?
I completely agree, and I almost said the exact same thing to my wife this morning. I said, literally almost the same words. I said, look, now that all of the mechanisms of getting him out have failed, I really worry that there's only one more thing that can be done, which is let's literally physically go after him. But I do share your optimism that once that insanity kind of wanes, that maybe you might have a very productive mandate. That said, I want to warn against complacency that now that Donald Trump has come in, the battle has won. It took between 50 to 100 years for these parasitic ideas to first be spawned on academic campuses and then proliferate into all nooks and crannies of society. We need to dismantle that. And it's going to take a lot more than a successful term by Donald Trump and then J.D. Vance following for that to be reversed. The battle goes on for the soul of our societies and for our human capacity to reason. That's going to be much longer than the tenure of Donald Trump.
You are a philosopher. You're a thinker. I think you are also a political observer, and you're also a man of the world. So I don't want to put you in a position where I think you are not versed, but I think that you are versed when I ask you this question. What has happened in the United States would not be surprised if we placed it into the context of things that have happened across the world. Incumbents have lost as inflation has been out of control globally. Change has been on the ballot in almost every country. There has also been a populist movement. Many have described it. Detractors have described it as a far-right movement everywhere from Argentina to Hungary. But those movements predate this re-election of Donald Trump. So we've had some chance to see, how does the pendulum swing over time? How does it swing in Europe? I'm curious, this is a high moment, but politics is always about a pendulum. Maybe the victorious party overextends themselves in some way. What do you think, if we're looking at the model of Europe, could be the way there is a backlash or a pendulum given some time here in America?
Look, I'm optimistic because, to your point, you're right that there are many of these autocorrective mechanisms that are happening around the world. But again, I don't want people to be complacent. So you have an incoming president who may put a stop to immigration, but that's not enough. You have to deport millions of people. Without doing that, it's like saying, I stop the fact that I'm 200 pounds overweight, but I'll never do the effort to lose the weight. You have to reverse the trends. So, for example, in Montreal, Canada, I no longer recognize Montreal because everywhere I turn, there are veiled women. So I've seen more veiled women in a single day in Montreal than I did in my entire life growing up in the Middle East. That is a problem, right? So even if you were to stop immigration from such countries today, that doesn't mean that you're going to address the fact that there are millions of people in your society that don't share your foundational values. So I am partly optimistic, but a lot more work needs to be done for us to regain our enlightened societies.
All right. Dr. Gadsad, it's always great to talk to you. It's great to talk to you on the deeper issues of this day. You can always, if you're listening or watching, go check out his deeper thoughts in full on With the Parasitic Mind. He's got several great books for you to check out. And he as well has The Saad Truth with Dr. Saad, which you can watch and listen to whenever you would like. Really appreciate the conversation, Dr. Gadsad.
Thank you, sir. Great to be with you. Cheers.
All right.